Hey everyone, welcome to The Path of Me. I'm your host, Wendy Hutchinson, and I have a beautiful guest today. Kute Blackson is with us. He is a transformational speaker, a national best-selling author of You Are the One, and most recently published author of his book, The Magic of Surrender, Finding the Courage to Let Go. He organizes events around the world as a transformational speaker, and in 2019 received the prestigious award, Walden Award, in the New Thought Wisdom category that Unity organization honors once a year people that they recognize that are socially conscious leaders and are making the world a better place. So welcome, Kute. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I read your book and your story is so fascinating. I wanted to go back to the very beginning because I really believe we're everything that we are is based on the foundation of our family of origin story. And you had such an interesting combination with a Japanese mother and then a father from Ghana. I mean, such an incredible cultural I won't say clash, but such cultural differences that you were a product of. And not only was it your father just this ordinary guy, he was a miraculous healer. He had this huge practice of followers and churches. What was that like growing up in that environment for you?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't think anything special about it or different or unusual because it's all I knew. Like my first memories as a young boy was seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor, and she picked up the sand that my father walked on, and he didn't know. He was just walking, and she stood up, and a miracle, right? And week after week, I grew up seeing blind people see and deaf people hear. My father would put his hands on a person who couldn't see and they would see. My father would look at a person in a wheelchair and say, hey, stand up, and they would stand up. And so it really didn't seem that unusual because that's what I saw every day. And I think that was a blessing because it wasn't anything that extraordinary. It was just normal. And I grew up with a sense of possibilities. You know, I grew up with a sense of no limits in a way. And so I think it was a blessing. I think as human beings, we start losing touch with that magic. We start losing touch with that sense of possibility. We get conditioned to believe that everything is so limited, and it was a blessing. My mother was Japanese and Buddhist, and my father had all these churches. And so my upbringing was very eclectic, and I would sneak into my father's office and read. He had like thousands of books on his bookshelf, and I would read. I became obsessed with reading the books on his bookshelf. My first self-help book was at the age of 8 or 9 years old, a woman called Shakti Gawain, Creative Visualization. And then I became obsessed with metaphysics and people like Joe Goldsmith, Joseph Murphy, Unity, Science of Mind. Then I got obsessed with the Eastern mystics, so to speak, and Yogananda. And then Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay and Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra. And so this for me became my world and my universe. And I would come home, I come home from school, I would do my homework, and I would dive into self-help and spiritual books from like 6 p.m. to midnight and trying to just understand life. And so this was it was a calling for me more than anything.
You were a seeker from such an early age. And I think all of us that are seekers go through that sponge phase where we're just constantly seeking knowledge and absorbing and creating our own internal worldview, right?
Yeah.
And what I found fascinating was your father had this dream for you that you would take on his ministry and perpetuate his legacy. And that must have been a lot of pressure for you at a young age because you were being called in another direction. So to have the courage to actually have that conversation, that must have taken a lot of courage for you to have that conversation, to choose you and your own path and disappoint this person who had been so instrumental in laying the foundation for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, when I was 14, I was ordained as a minister, and my father announced to the congregation. I'll never forget the day, because it came as a shock to me. We didn't speak about it.
He
My
forgot
father,
to mention that to you. That
he
you
forgot to, we forgot to talk about it. But that was my father. He was very
Right.
old school, very
Okay.
patriarchal.
Right.
He came from the standpoint of, it's my way or it's my way. Please choose which way you would like. And honestly, that's my dad. And if he didn't choose his way, things didn't go too well. And
Right.
so when he announced to the congregation, my son is taking over, I had no idea. We didn't discuss it. We didn't talk about it. It just happened, and I was shocked. I looked at my mother. She didn't know anything.
Oh, she had no idea either.
She had no idea. This was my father's style. Like, he just wouldn't tell anyone. It wasn't collaborative.
Wow.
And so I knew that inside of my being, something wasn't aligned.
Right.
Something wasn't right. Something wasn't, it just didn't feel true. It didn't feel real. And so I was too afraid to speak to my father. I was too afraid to tell him how I felt. My fear was, if I spoke my truth and told him how I feel, that I would be outcast, that I would lose his love, that I would be abandoned and lose the community. And so I said nothing for 4 years. And that took me into, from 14 to 18. And that took me into a real deep turmoil of questioning. And at 18, I felt this calling. I knew I had to make a decision, and I felt this calling to come to America. I wanted to come to the US and go into this field of self-help and personal development. All of the authors I read about lived in Southern California.
Right.
And so I wanted to come and meet Louise Hay and Deepak Chopra and, Brian Tracy and all these folks. And so my soul was pulling me here, yet my life was pretty much carved out for me. And when I looked into my future, here's what happened. I looked into my future, age 20, age 25, age 30, age 40. And honestly, I felt such a heartbreak and pain because I knew I was betraying myself, and the pain of self-betrayal was so strong that I felt this soul suicide, that in that moment, I had the sense of, if I lie to myself now and I'm successful by everyone else's standards, but I don't have myself, then what kind of success is that? That I can never be truly happy and fulfilled being someone that I'm not, and living someone else's life. And if I lie now, I'm going to have to live this life for the rest of my life. And that possibility was so painful that I knew I had to speak to my father. And at 18, I spoke to him. I told him I'm not taking over.
Oh, that must have been a tough conversation.
I was terrified. We didn't speak. And I think so many of us, we allow fear to hijack us. We allow the fear of, if I dare to be who I am and express myself, then, and if you know who I am, you won't love me. And I think so many of us, we hold back who we are, 100%. Our gifts, our talents, our voice, out of fear of not being loved. And so I had to face my deepest fear in this moment. And I was terrified. We didn't speak for 2 years. That was really, 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 really heartbreaking.
Wow. So there was a big chasm that opened because you did not follow the path he had chosen.
Yeah. My worst fear happened, which was we didn't speak, and we were still kind of living in the same house. Luckily, my father would travel a lot, so it wasn't all the time, but it was difficult and it was challenging. And I knew, and there was a part of me that wondered if I made the right decision, and the fear wanted to take me back, but I knew something was pulling me. Sometimes what your soul guides you to do doesn't make sense to your mind, and it isn't always convenient.
Or to anyone else, for that matter. So you have to be so committed to your soul truth that you can't allow the opinion of others or the agendas of others to pull you off. But it does take tremendous courage and the willingness to choose you at all costs. Which is what you did, which is so admirable. And then you went on this journey of seeking. You went to India.
Well, first, I think I should say, I won a green card in the green card lottery. And really? That's yes. I don't know if I don't think I write about it in my second book, but I won a green card. I was in this moment of like, okay, what the hell do I do now? Like I'm following my soul and I'm in the middle of a desert with no idea what I'm doing. Like universe, don't leave me here, you know?
Right.
And I said this prayer, and I kid you not, within days, someone handed me a magazine called The Economist, and I felt some chills that something was happening. And I look in the back, it says the American government's giving away 55,000 green cards in the green card lottery. And that's what I entered through this law firm. And I won the green card in the lottery. And that gave me the knowing and the confidence and the assurance that I am on the right path, that when I follow my soul and don't compromise, the universe supports that. And came to the US with $800, knew no one in the country.
That's incredible.
Just showed up.
Yeah, I really believe, and I know this is a personal truth, that when we act in alignment, even if we don't know the how, even if we don't know the when, even if we don't know the unfolding, if we are always moving in alignment and with unwavering faith forward, the universe is delivering everything to support that, because we're meant to be on that path. We're meant to follow our soul, our inner guidance, and also to have the knowing 100% that we're going to be guided. And that requires faith. And I think that's why this book is so important, The Magic of Surrender, because to be in alignment all of the time, you have to be connected and trust yourself 100%. And we are raised in such a culture of fear and limitation and contraction. And also, I really know, based on my own practice, that people have this need for belonging and validation. And when you're walking your own path, you're validating yourself. You belong to yourself. You are one with yourself, but it takes a lot of work to get there, right? To break that programming down.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, you had a near-death experience in India that you mentioned. And I really feel that we come to these nexus points and these pivot points in our lives where we meet a certain person or we have a specific experience, and it really does change you in some profound way. So I was wondering what the impact of that was, because it sounded like you had this very quick, instantaneous life review that allowed you to kind of revisit your entire life to that point.
Yeah, there was a few of them, but there was one where I was pretty sure I was going to die. And it's funny because you wonder how you're going to respond to the moment when that happens. But in that moment, everything went. Basically, I was in a car in the back seat in India, in South India, and the driver, I knew him. He often drove me, and I liked him because he would get me from point A to point B really fast. But on this instance, in this tiny one lane, I don't want to say highway, road in the middle of nowhere, driving for 5 hours, he was going so fast.
Oh my gosh.
And like, I don't know if it was 100 and some miles an hour. And I remember looking up and seeing a truck on this one lane highway, this truck coming towards us at the same pace.
Oh my gosh.
And we're going, and it was like this head-on collision because no one was like moving to the side and I looked up and I thought, I'm expletives.
This is it.
Yeah, this is the moment. And everything went into slow motion. And I thought, wow, this is how it ends. And I flashed on my mom, and I flashed on my dad, and I flashed on all the relationships I'd had and the impact I'd had, the things I regretted, the people I had to forget, like all these things just happened so quick. Right. And I thought, okay, this is it. And incredibly, it was very calm in that moment. And I closed my eyes, and it must have been 5, 6, 10 seconds, 8 seconds, something like that. Closed my eyes, bracing for that moment. And all I remember was we started spinning around as I'm having this flash. The car starts spinning around. It's spinning around, and my eyes are closed. My eyes and spinning. It's spinning. It's spinning. It's spinning. It's spinning. And then it came to a halt. And I opened my eyes and I was disoriented because of the spinning, but also because of the experience of trauma. And I look around and I was like, but this doesn't look like, this looks like this doesn't look like another dimension of another reality. And I thought, shit, am I still alive? I couldn't figure out where I was for a moment because I was sure I was dead. But then I realized I'm here. And I looked up. And I looked
still in the car. You didn't.
I'm still in the car. We were on the site. We were now on the sort of this off the road in this dirt gravel sort of this farmland on there. We're kind of in this farmland gravel area. And I look. The truck is gone. The truckers just keeps driving. And we're now on the side of the road. And I'm looking at the driver who's calm as can be. Calm. And I said to him, "Wow. Hey man, you may want to slow down." And he looks at me and he says something very profound. Okay. Very profound. And I think the universe has a way of speaking to us. He said to me, "God is in control. Don't worry. God is in control." And he just picked up and just began driving. That was like a message. That was like a spiritual message from the universe in that moment. I felt like life speaking to me like, hey, no matter what chaos is happening, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it doesn't look like, no matter even if you seem out of control, there is an intelligence. There is something that's unfolding it. Even though in the moment it looks like things might be falling apart, sometimes they're falling together from the level of the mind or the ego. We can't always see why things are happening in a particular moment, but there is an intelligence there. That things are always, I believe that things are always working for my highest good, even if I don't see the reason in the moment.
100%, 100%. And I think people have this myth that only when things are going well are you moving in the direction of your dreams or your purpose. But so often there's the breakdown, there's chaos, there is the decomposition, right? The caterpillar goes into that chrysalis and becomes broken down to nothing before the transformation can begin. So also I think too, spiritual mastery is maintaining that calm and knowing and higher perspective despite what is happening in our external world, because when we can reach higher in our perspective in our daily life, we can really see exactly what you're saying. There is a cosmic order to things. It's not always what they seem on the surface level. Maybe that job or that person is being removed from your life for a reason, so you can go and tap into the infinite potentials and timelines that are available to you, right? Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this book. What inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, this wasn't the book that I thought I was going to write. Actually, I had my own intention and agenda of the book I thought I should write, the book I thought would sell, the book I thought my clients wanted, the book I thought would be a bestseller. And I remember coming up with a whiteboard with a bunch of ideas, and none of those, they were great. Maybe I'll write about them someday, but none of those ideas resonated. None of those ideas were truly authentic. It was like trying to force something to fit into a circle, into a square. Yeah. Right. And the only word that I wrote that really had light on it and stood out was the word surrender. And I thought, oh my God, that's the book. And my ego, honestly, my ego resisted. Right. I thought, I don't want to write about surrender. People are gonna, resist the concept. And I just knew that this was the book that my soul was born to write. This was the book that was seeking to be written. And so I surrendered to that and things started flowing. And so I think the genesis of the book on one level has been my whole life, but the event that I think brought it to conscious awareness and triggered the book into this physical reality was in 2016, my mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer. And my mother was my everything. She raised me, my best friend, so to speak, the person I loved the most. And so when that happened, it was really challenging. I was traveling the world. I was on a high, promoting my first book, bestseller. And here I am now. Like, life has a way of humbling you. And so here I am. And I start traveling back and forth from LA to London to be with my mother and help her through her treatment. And every month I was going back and forth, 1 week a month, every month, every month. And I had every intention to heal her and alternative therapies and get her well. And I soon realized that nothing I do is going to help, really. And
acceptance is a form of
I
surrender.
had to accept and surrender. And what started out as the worst year of my life turned out to be the best year of my life, because I got to sit with her in her chemo session. I got to be with her. I got to love her. I got to spend time. Every moment became so precious because I gave up hope, not in a bad way. I just gave up any future. It was just like this moment now. And I surrendered to this moment. And so 6 months into the process, and I think this is where the seed of the book was planted. 6 months into the process, the doctor said, there's nothing else we can do for you. Basically, you're going to die, is what they tell you, in a nice way. So get your affairs in order. And it was a really challenging conversation. I could tell the doctor felt bad, and she was trying her best to deliver the news kindly. And I went with my mother in the parking lot, and I asked my mother 2 questions. The first question was, are you afraid? And she said to me, calmly, as authentically as could be, no, I'm not afraid, because I know I'm not this body. That this body is just the temporary vehicle for my soul. And I'm going to be with you from the other side. And so I know who I am. And that was a profound moment, a feeling, that transmission from her, And then I looked at my mother and I said, is there anything I can do for you as your son? Like, what can I do to make the last days of your life easier? What do you need? And she looked at me and she said, son, there's nothing I need and there's nothing I want. All I really want is what God wants for my life. And in that moment, I saw that she was not attached to living. She was not attached to dying. She was open to the highest good for her soul's journey. And that's what I realized was the key to her freedom. During this entire year, she didn't cry, she didn't complain. She was a very emotional woman, but she didn't cry, complain, feel like a victim. She was at peace, she was happy, she was calm, she was just being, and she was free. And so I saw that the key was she was surrendered. She was really surrendered. And that's what inspired the book. When I was looking at that whiteboard and I saw surrender, then I flashed back and everything about my life and how my parents met, and my father and my mother married my father. They couldn't even speak the same language, hadn't even met. Surrender. All these references of surrender throughout my life. And that's when I felt like this is the book I was born to write. And I want to really translate this concept of surrender for the newer generation, to make it accessible. Because, in our culture, we have this idea that surrender is weak and surrender is passive. And that if you surrender, it's giving up, it's waving the white flag. That if you surrender, you're going to be a victim or taken advantage of, or you won't manifest your goals, dreams, and desires, or that you'll get less than. And really what I'm saying...
It's quite the opposite, isn't it? It's quite the opposite is true, but I think there's so much fear that people hold on to. It's difficult for them to actually let go and trust and have faith. And I think a lot of it too is people, you are so fortunate that you have been so aligned with your soul from a very young age. You've trusted and had that connection fostered by you, through you, to you from a very young age. And not everyone has that opportunity, right? And so how beautiful that you're able to offer this to the world so that you can share with people the power that comes with surrender. And I think also with surrender comes a level of detachment. So you also have to detach from the need to control, because fear and control go hand in hand. So when you're in a space of fear, you want to control the timing, you want to control the unfolding, you have a very specific agenda of how things are going to play out, and then it sets you up for all this disappointment. When in truth, if you can surrender and detach and just allow the magic to happen for you. Something so much bigger might be coming to you, something so much more than you can
Sure.
imagine. Because I think when you're trying to control it, you're also limiting your potential timelines, you're trying to make everything happen. And that's the ego, truly, right? Trying to force, like you said, that square peg in the round hole,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
to speak, right?
Yeah.
So, what a gift your mom was for you. What a
Yeah.
gift.
She was amazing. She was really an amazing human. And through her example of how she lived her life, showed me so much. And I think that that's the essence of surrender. It's when you let go and you surrender and you allow. What if you didn't get less, but you got more? And I think that that's the beauty. And that, the reason I called the book, like there was a lot of discussion. Like nothing about the book was what I thought. The cover was not what I thought. The title was not what I thought. I mean, I was trying to rack my brains for like really sexy titles. I was like, no, this is the title, The Magic of Surrender. When the publisher showed me the cover, I'm like, I hate this cover. And then I thought, that's the cover. And so the reason the book is called The Magic of Surrender, not like the power of surrender, the art of surrender, is because magic is that which is beyond our ego's mental capacity to envision our lives. And when we surrender, we go beyond ourselves and we tap into that infinite potentiality of life. And so it's letting go of control. It's when we stop trying to force and manipulate life and we let go of the idea of who we think we should be, how we think life should be, then we allow, we're available, we're open. And that's, we all want the magic, but we don't want to surrender. And I think the next level of our lives requires the next level of us. The next level of us requires that we let go of what's no longer aligned, but we tend to hold on out of fear, out of safety, out of comfort, out of self-preservation, but that just blocks our blessing even more. What I do want to clarify, I think, for people though, is surrender is like some people have this idea that surrender is just sitting down and just, doing nothing. I'm just going to do nothing, go with the flow, just sit and wait. It can involve waiting, but I think sometimes we have to be careful to not use surrender as an excuse for laziness and not use surrender as an excuse for not action. Surrender doesn't necessarily mean you sit there and do nothing. For instance, when you truly surrender, you are feeling your deepest truth. You're feeling the deepest expression of what life is seeking to unfold through you. Like, what is life seeking to manifest? What is life seeking to create? And when you really feel that, you align yourself with the deepest expression, your deepest integrity, the deepest truth. And as you feel the deepest, most authentic impulse, you align your actions, your thinking, your plan, your strategy with that. Then you move into action and you can give 100%. That might mean you work 20 hours a day if that's what is aligned. That might mean you go out and protest for a cause you believe in because it's what's coming through you. Like Mandela wasn't lazy. Gandhi wasn't lazy. Mother Teresa, she took a lot of action. And so sometimes it doesn't mean just being passive and doing nothing. It means living in alignment. And that looks differently for different people.
Also, it's not just living in alignment and taking aligned action, but also being the fullest expression of yourself in everything that you do. Because when you are the fullest expression of yourself and in alignment with everything that you do, your energetic frequency is rising. And as your frequency rises, everything in resonance, because it's all energy, we're all consciousness having a human experience. We're all a soul, the energy of the soul having a human experience. So I feel like as we raise our frequency through aligned action, through alignment in how we speaking our truth, surrendering, trusting the process, standing in our power, creating boundaries, knowing our worthiness, we are telling the universe through that core belief and vibration what we're calling to us. So there is also a power in being and standing in our true alignment and frequency and calling it to us.
For sure.
Coupled with aligned action. And it doesn't have to be that you go 10 steps ahead. You just, that incremental aligned step will move you and attract the next and the next and the next. So that yellow brick road just kind of
Mhm.
divinely unfolds in front of you. That's my experience anyway, you know. So I feel like that kind of aligns with what you're saying also. Yeah. How do you get your clients to, because they're very, you know, most people are they're holding very tightly to their fears and their patterns of behavior keep repeating, right? Because you keep making the same, maybe codependent choices, or reacting from a wounded space, right? Abandonment or whatever it is that you're carrying. How do you encourage your clients to just kind of loosen the grip and accept surrender as a way forward?
Yeah, I think, you know, I have a lot of compassion for the ways in which we all hold on. And I think even just to shift that relationship, because what's holding on is, let's say, the ego, you know, the ego of what we think is this. Ego is not really a thing. It's just that sense of identification, and the way we identify ourselves as ourselves, this mind, body, personality, persona mechanism that we believe ourselves to be through conditioning, through life, through society, through parents. And so we've been conditioned to become this ego structure, and it's been reinforced by media, and we hold tightly to this way of being, our beliefs, our stories, etc. And so the degree to which we are conditioned is the degree to which we're not free, and the degree to which we hold on. And so I think when we can understand the right relationship to what we are, then we also start seeing why we hold on. And that holding on is often the ego's way of reinforcing our existence. And the ego's job is to reinforce our existence, but also protect us from pain. And so
that's the key, right? Avoiding pain often is the reason people are stuck.
Yes.
Because to go further, to go higher, if we're talking about really living our best life, it requires letting go of aspects of ourselves that no longer serve us, that are no longer aligned, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, you know, I think as children, we are surrendered. If you look at a child is being, child is pure. A baby, before they're conditioned, they're in touch with their spirit, their soul, their essence. They jump on a table and they'll sing. They don't have a sense of, I'm not Bruno Mars, or I can't sing, or they'll run naked. They don't care about, I have some belly fat. They're so being. They're free. They're free, being pure light. They are surrendered. They fall down, cry, they're over it. They poop and they're over it. And they're just in the flow of beingness, in the flow of surrender. But we're born into kind of a preset pattern of conditioning. We meet our parents. They're doing the best that they can do based on their upbringing, their childhood, et cetera, et cetera. And so maybe there's some kind of dysfunction or pain or trauma. We all have something in this human experience. And so the way that this patterning comes, I think when we understand it, we can have some compassion. The first thing is we begin to learn to shut down, disconnect, not feel the pain that's around us. Maybe dad had some mental health issues, mom was an alcoholic, they were fighting. And so there was maybe our emotional needs weren't met. So they were perhaps fighting and there was pain. And so we learned to shut down, disconnect, not feel. Layers and layers and layers of unfelt feeling began to build up, and that light, that free-flowing essence got a bit hidden underneath the unprocessed feelings of pain, of hurt, of guilt, of shame. And then we learn a way of being to a defense mechanism to avoid pain, to avoid that pain. Then we kind of contort ourselves into a certain way of being and a shape to not feel that pain. Then we go into our life. What worked for us when we were 5 kind of works when we're 15, but kind of stops working when we're 20, 25, 30, but we're still holding on to the same way of self-protection. If I overanalyze, if I erect walls around my heart, then I don't have to ever feel the pain again. And that holding on is a self-protective mechanism that is often unconscious to us. And so part of that resistance and part of that, what feels difficult to let go, is really a young part of us that it's arising from good intention. And that good intention is to keep us safe. And so many times in an effort to let go, I see people forcing surrender, like I should let go, I should hurry the process. But I think if we can meet ourselves with that awareness of, wow, I'm conditioned. And then we also learn as children to go into life and the sense of who do I need to be in order to get love and validation and approval. So
that's huge.
Start developing.
You start to put the masks on.
The masks,
right?
the roles.
You become so good at being the chameleon, then you lose your true soul essence.
We lose our essence.
Right, yeah.
And then we start contorting ourselves into a certain shape again of, this is who I am. I'm going to be the nice person, the good person, the independent one. What gets reinforced by parents, society. And we hold so tightly to that way of being, avoiding pain, defense mechanisms to never feel that hurt again. And we start developing this mask and role persona. The challenge is we think that's who we are.
Exactly. That's
holding on. That holding on,
right.
Identification, call it ego,
right.
is what creates the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can just recognize, I'm conditioned and I've become that, but I'm not, that's not what I am. Exactly. And have awareness of that. Yeah. Then we can start meeting ourselves with some compassion and mercy and kindness to hold ourselves with some love. And then, as you mentioned the feeling part, the willingness to feel, to acknowledge and feel some of those feelings that we've learned to suppress, that we're holding ourselves into a certain way of being in order to control, to never feel again. Yeah. If we're willing to, through a coach, through a therapist, through some personal work, process through and feel those layers of feeling that we're controlling so much to never feel. Most of our control ways of being is really, it's good, it's beautiful intention. It's those young parts of ourselves that's like, I don't want to feel helpless like I felt again when I was 5. So I'm going to control and micromanage everything. But it doesn't really work. So I think if we can be aware of the pattern, aware of the intention, and begin to feel the feelings and let them go and meet and bring loving to those parts of ourselves.
Loving ourselves is the key.
It's the key.
Trying to return to love ourselves, but we've never been taught to love ourselves because we've only been taught to please others.
Yes.
You know, so I know in my own story, it was you do things at your own expense because that's expected. You show up this way, even if it doesn't feel right inside. And for a lot of sensitives, empathic people that are out there, that can create such a internal push-pull because you really feel and know who you are, but you can't express it. So I think there's just so many layers of healing that has to happen so that we can pull layer by layer off of that armor we have over our hearts. But it's difficult to do without, like you said, a coach, a therapist, an intuitive to help guide you through the process, because when you're in the program, you don't realize you're in the program. It's your blind spot.
Exactly. Right? We think that's who we are. Right. You know, we think that's who we are. And the ego's job, what we think we are, is to reinforce its identity and to keep us safe and protect us. And so that's why the letting go can feel so scary, because it feels like a death. It feels like a death for what we think ourselves to be.
It is an ego death. It is an ego death. And that is a scary thing, because if I'm not this, then what am I?
Then who am I?
Who am I? Right? What's my purpose? Why am I here? And then you kind of float for a little while in this existential crisis. Like, oh my gosh, I let this go, but I don't know what direction to go, because you've only been this your whole life, right? Decades.
But when we can realize that the ego isn't even real, the ego is a process, and that we're not the ego, even though we think that's what we are. It's a process of like the bicycle is a thing, but cycling is a process. And when we realize, even what is it that's real and what is it that dies? is what dies is not really me.
Right. It's the illusion.
It's the
right?
illusion.
You're letting go of the
that
You're
exactly.
letting go of the illusion. And I think surrender it's so many things, right? It's detachment, it's letting go of that ego, it's acceptance, it's so many things. It's such a powerful tool if you can actually get there. And I think your book is going to totally help people get there. So well written, such a great story. I think everybody should go out and hold it up one more time. Here you go. The magic of surrender. I think it's going to help so many people. Thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for bringing your light forward, for having the courage to choose you and not take over your father's 300 churches. I want before we sign off, I would love to know what the catalyst was for your healing, your relationship with your father, because I know there was a schism there. And what inspired you to go back in, and how did you approach him differently so that you could heal that relationship?
I mean, there were many stages of healing. When I first came to the US, I would say the first major layer of healing with my father was after a couple of years of coming to the US. I fell in love with a beautiful woman, and she says to me, I think you have some anger towards your father. You know, I was a young kid, and I said, thank you very much, but this relationship is over.
Oh, okay.
End of story.
Wow.
And then I meet another beautiful woman who I thought, now this is the one for me, because love brings up stuff, right? And I so wanted it to work that she said, again, I think you have some anger towards your father. This time, because I wanted it to work, I thought, got to figure this stuff out.
Better sit with this for a minute.
Better sit with this, otherwise I'm going to lose her.
Over. Yeah.
And so that's what initially made me go really deep inside myself as a young man, and therapy and seminars and healing. And one weekend, I'll never forget, I did this men's retreat somewhere in the middle of the forest with men. And that weekend allowed me to get in touch with the anger that I had towards my father, that I was not acknowledging, the pain, the sadness, and the hurt, and the grief of not having a father, feeling abandoned by my father, feeling rejected, but all those feelings that my ego, right, had learned to suppress. And it was keeping me stuck, and I really grieved it. I really felt it. And once I felt through all those layers of pain, my father had nothing to do with this. I always say that getting complete and healing with someone has nothing to do with the other person. It's really our relationship with the other person within ourselves. And I really had to ask myself, do I truly want to be free, or I want to be right? Do I want to be free, or do I want to make a point? Because I didn't feel free. And I really honestly forgave my father that weekend, truly. And that opened up an energy, because underneath all of that, there was such a depth of love I had for him. You know, he was what he was. He wasn't good at it, but there was such a depth of love that I was able to touch into underneath all those layers of pain. And I kid you not, that was a Sunday. Monday I went home, and somewhere in that week, I forget which day, after 2 years of not speaking to my father, he calls me up and he said, son, I think we need to talk. And that began the healing of the relationship again. And it was a very beautiful, just healing. And we weren't close like I was with my mother, but the anger wasn't there. There was a peace there. Another level of healing happened with my father when my mother passed away, and a level that I didn't even realize, because I was, at peace with my father. But when my mother passed away, I thought my father would go first because he's older, and I spoke to her. It might sound strange, but I spoke to her from the other side.
No, I believe in that.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, and
I
asked her.
Closer sometimes when you get closer, because they're energetically right there all the time. You can just tap in, and they're right there supporting.
I spoke to her and I said, "Why did you go first?" And she said, I went first in order to gift you a deeper healing and relationship with your father.
Ooh,
Because
feel
if
that
I,
right here.
yeah, because if I was here, it would be me and you. And now I'm gone.
Right.
Now this is your invitation. And in
Wow.
that moment, up until that point, I was good with my father. But there was always a part that was like, well, a relationship takes two people. He has to call me too. I'm not going to always be the one. And in that moment, in honor of my mother, I just dropped everything. And I said, you know what? Nothing matters other than the loving. And I am going to, I made a spiritual commitment as a duty as a son, but also for my own growth and evolution. I said, I'm going to call my father every day. It doesn't matter what he does. Doesn't matter if he calls me. Doesn't matter if he loves me. Drop all expectation of anything, receiving anything from him. I'm going to call him every day as a commitment to his soul, as honoring to his soul, and as a commitment to my own spiritual progress, to love him every day and call him every day, no matter what, till he dies. And I called him every day, and
What?
still do,
What?
every day.
Wow.
Call
That
him,
is so
and
powerful.
sometimes it's for 5 minutes, sometimes it's for 1 minute, sometimes it's just to check in, nothing
deep. Commitment to it.
but that commitment every day, and it healed him because no one has ever done that for him. Right. It healed our relationship where he realized, wow, this my son loves me, and he realized, I think, another level because he wasn't really there for me, and I think he realized, my son doesn't really need to be there for me because I wasn't there for him. But the fact that despite all of that, I am, it just brought us to a whole nother level of closeness. Closeness, right? In such a profound way. Like really a lot of healing on energetic soul level has happened.
Well, and unconditional love, it heals. It heals generational trauma. It heals wounds. You're actually breaking ancestral patterning by showing up in that way. And what a beautiful,
it's a gift.
I was going to say, what a beautiful gift, and both ways.
Yeah. And for the first time, it's what's amazing for those listening in, the first time in my entire life, after, I don't know, it was after a year or after a period of time, a man who'd never called me, a man who never wished me happy birthday, forgot about my birthdays, started calling me and telling me how much he loved me, started calling me crazy, started calling me and telling me, happy birthday. And so a huge soul healing happened for us. Absolutely. So I just want everyone to know, healing with those in your life, it's possible, but it will require that you give up and surrender certain things. For me, I had to give up all my expectations, being right, my judgments. When I gave them up, it transformed everything. And the healing wasn't with him. It was with my relationship with him inside of myself. So I just want everyone to know it is possible. It is worth it. And if you're holding on to anything, it's not worth it because life is too short. It
is. And it also, I think it always comes back to us, and the things we're rejecting in the other person are the things we're rejecting in ourselves. And so when we can have the courage to really be vulnerable and really go there and go, oh, those aha moments when you see yourself and you're like, I'm actually the core of all the things happening. They're just a mirror for my issues. That need to heal. Gosh, so beautiful. Kute, thank you so much for your time. Thanks you for sharing your story. I hope everybody picks up a copy of your book, The Magic of Surrender. And to my audience, thank you so much for joining us today. Be kind to yourselves, and I love y'all. Bye.